Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning. It would be useful if I could have the original page on the original. No, she has the original. Okay, we've been studying the greater discourse on the destruction of craving. This is the Maha-tanhasankhaya Sutta. And last time I just went through the formula of dependent origination on page 354 to 355, taking it backwards from birth as the condition for aging and death, and taking it in sequence back to the original condition, which is ignorance as the condition for volitional formations or volitional activities. Okay, then starting with paragraph 19, the Buddha takes it sort of quickly back through forward. And he starts with what we might call the general principle of conditionality. So he says, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. This is for those who like to study very deeply. I'll write the formula in Pali on the board. Okay, the formula is actually made up of two parts. There is one part consists of two lines, and the second part consists of two lines. Okay, good. Has anybody here studied Pali? Okay, so yeah, this phrase, it's what is called, don't get upset with this, a locative absolute, which means one thing that is existing or going on as a condition for another thing to occur. So, imasmin sati means when this exists, and then literally it's this comes to be, but the two thises represent two different things. So in English we would say this and that. So when this exists, that comes to be. And then this is a statement of, we call in terms of cases, the ablative case, through the arising of this arises. But again, the second this is different, so we would better to translate through the arising of this, that arises. So this basically establishes a kind of principle that it's a very broad principle of conditionality that can apply to almost anything. So it doesn't have to be restricted to the 12 factors that we usually find in the formula of dependent origination. But we could say, when the seed is planted, the tree will grow. Through the planting of the seed, the tree arises. Or when there is maybe a housing crisis, unemployment occurs. Through the occurrence of the housing crisis, unemployment arises. So you can apply this general principle of conditionality almost to any phenomenon of the world. So this is the general or universal principle of dependent origination, or we call specific conditionality. Of course, it means not simply that things arise from conditions, but that there are specific conditions for a particular phenomena to arise. But the Buddha is not just, though he lays out this general principle of conditionality, but the main focus of his teaching is with the arising and ceasing of dukkha, of suffering. In general, the suffering of the round of birth and death, or samsara. And so he takes this general principle of conditionality, and then he applies it. We have the pragmatic or applied principle of dependent origination, which is here laid out in terms of 12 factors. So the way the Buddha elaborates on this general principle of conditionality, with ignorance as condition, the formations or volitional activities come to be. With the volitional activities as condition, the volitional activities are wholesome and unwholesome actions, the activities that create karma. Then with those activities as condition, accompanied and underlaid by ignorance, there comes the arising of consciousness. That is the first arising of consciousness in the process of conception, embryonic development, and then through the whole course of life, the consciousness is sustained by past volitional activities. Then when consciousness arises, it doesn't occur alone, but consciousness brings into being along with it nama-rupa. This is the mental name and form, which as I explained last week, or last week, this is the psychophysical organism, excluding consciousness. So form is the physical body, and nama, or name, are all of the mental activities that occur, or mental functions that occur along with consciousness. Okay, as name and form starts to take shape in the womb, starts to develop, then there emerge out of them the 6 sense bases. The 5 physical sense bases emerge out of the developing physical organism, and then as the nama, or the mental side, develops, then the mind faculty emerges and begins to function. Okay, then the new organism is equipped with these 6 sense bases and then uses these 6 sense bases to make contact. Contact is what? It's the coming together of consciousness with a sense object through a sense faculty. So contact means that the visual consciousness, or that consciousness meets visible objects through the eye, and then we get eye consciousness, visual consciousness. Consciousness meets sounds through the ear, and then we get ear consciousness, and so on. Okay, so the 6 sense bases are the base for contact, basis for condition for contact. When contact takes place, then there occurs feeling, pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and the neutral feeling that's neither painful nor pleasant. Okay, now when feeling occurs in an unenlightened mind, an undeveloped mind, the usual response to the feeling is craving. That is, when there is pleasant feeling, there is craving to enjoy the pleasure. When there is painful feeling, there comes a repulsion towards the pain, an aversion towards it, and an attempt to escape from the pain by seeking new sources of pleasure. And then if there is a neutral feeling, sometimes if it's a kind of dull neutral feeling, then one needs some kind of stimulation, and so one again goes seeking new sources of pleasure. But if it's a very subtle, peaceful, neutral feeling, then there comes a kind of detachment to that pleasant feeling, to that neutral feeling. Okay, so out of craving, there arises clinging. So craving is basically the desire to obtain pleasant objects, agreeable conditions that one doesn't yet have. And then what's called upadhana is the holding to those pleasant and agreeable objects and agreeable situations, agreeable conditions that one has already obtained. It's the holding to them, the unwillingness to let go of them. It's kind of driven by a kind of maybe underlying anxiety that our pleasure, our security, our sense of identity depends upon holding to these things that give us enjoyment, that give us some sense of status, position, prestige, power, personal identity in some form. And then through that clinging, we engage in a fresh round of activities. This is what is called existence, bhava, which means what I call the karmically active side of existence, the karmically creative side of existence, in which we engage in new activities, activities intended to procure pleasure, position, and status for ourselves, or to protect and reinforce our satisfactory situation. And sometimes they can be harmful, violent activities, but they can also be wholesome activities. For example, if one, as most people do, at least even most Buddhists do, believe in a pleasant afterlife, in a heavenly world, so then they'll do good, meritorious activities with the hope of being reborn in a heavenly world, or having a good status in the human world again. So The karmic activities can be both wholesome and unwholesome, both good and bad, but as long as they are accompanied by ignorance and by craving, they will construct a future mode of being, a future state of existence. And so karmic activities or karmic existence is what creates our future existence. And then our future existence begins with birth, and then it leads from birth into growth, and then from growth there comes aging, decay, and death. Okay, so that is basically the sequence of the 12 conditions. And now when one just looks at the 12 conditions the way they're laid out in the Sutta, it's sometimes difficult to understand, but the commentaries have given us some helpful indications for understanding how, some helpful indications for understanding how these 12 factors should be seen, how we should put these 12 factors together into some kind of meaningful pattern. And they do this by classifying the 12 factors in a number of ways. So I've shown these ways of dividing up the 12 factors on the page that I handed out. So we can take a look at this page. So first, we can see that the 12 factors are divided by way of 3 periods of time. So there's the past period, which contains ignorance and the sankharas, the volitional activities or formations. Then there's the present period, which spreads out over 8 factors, I think. 8 factors from consciousness through the karmically active side of existence. And then there is the future period, which includes birth, aging, and death. Now this way of dividing up the 12 factors should be seen, I use the expression, it should be seen as an expository device. It doesn't mean, as some people think, that, okay, ignorance was something in the past, it doesn't exist now. Consciousness, name and form, is something that exists only in the present. They didn't exist in the past. That then the big puzzle, how can birth occur in the future? Didn't birth occur in the present? Didn't it occur in the past? But as I'm going to show, these 12 factors are actually very intricately interwoven. But when the text used 12 factors, they lay them out in a way that spreads out over 3 lives. But in actuality, they are interwoven, interacting, interdependent, interconditioning all the time. We'll see how that occurs in a few moments. But first, a few other modes of analysis I want to go through briefly. Okay, now taking this division of the 12 factors into 3 periods of time, we have 3 connections between them, or sometimes the 3 links. Okay, so one link is that between the past causes and the present effects. That is the link between the volitional activities and consciousness. So in this scheme, the volitional activities belong to the previous life, and those volitional activities propel consciousness into the new life. And it's those volitional activities that determine the particular realm of rebirth in which consciousness will arise. They determine the particular conditions under which consciousness will arise. And throughout our life, these volitional activities are constantly rising up from the past, beneath the threshold of awareness and conditioning our consciousness in the present. Okay, so the volitional activities backed by ignorance propel consciousness into the present, into the new life. Then as this new life unfolds, the factors from consciousness through feeling are basically the working out of past conditions, the kind of reflection of past causal conditions. So the arising of consciousness, name and form, is brought about by past karma, and then it's through the inflow of past karma that the 6 sense bases emerge, and this past karmic activity determines to a great extent our contacts and feelings. So this is occurring through the kind of inflow of past causation. But then, between the feelings that we undergo passively, through the contacts that we make, sort of involuntary contacts, between those feelings in our response to them, there is a certain gap, or a certain hiatus, a certain opening. And so we are free to react to feeling in different ways. If we apply mindfulness and clear comprehension to the feelings, then we start to weaken the process of causation. We start to dismantle it or disassemble it. Sort of deprive the defilements of their potency, their ability to sustain and propel the round of existence on through future cycles. But if we don't have this mindfulness and clear comprehension, then the normal reaction is craving. And so between feeling and craving, there is a certain gap or a link or a connection, and that is called the link of present effects. The present effects terminate, culminate in feeling, and then we react to that feeling. That reaction through craving begins a new cycle of causes. So craving is, between feeling and craving, there is the link between present effects and present causes. Okay, the present causes culminate in the volitional activities, or karmic activities, karmic existence. And then this is followed by the next factor, which is birth. And birth is birth into the future life. It's actually, technically, it's conception into the future life. And so there is a gap or link between the karmic activities or karmic existence and birth. This is the connection or link of present causes with future effects. Okay, so these are the 3 links or 3 connections. Okay, then the 12 factors are grouped into 3 rounds. It's called the 3 rounds, but it seems to me it's better to call them three divisions of the one round. The one round is the whole round of birth and death. But the three divisions are ways of dividing the 12 factors according to their role. Actually, maybe role is a good way of representing this rather than round, because we take the word role, it also can represent vata is varta, like it's probably etymologically connected with the English word whirl. Varta, vortex. Oops. Yeah, so I just thought of that. It never occurred to me before. But vata, Pali vata, is Sanskrit varta, which is related to vortex or roll in the sense of rolling over. But also this can signify the three roles that these 12 factors can play, in the sense like the role that an actor plays in a movie. So one role is that of defilements. So we look at the 12 factors and we want to see what of these 12 factors are actual kilesas or defilements. And so we look and we can see, starting at the beginning first, ignorance. Ignorance is said to be the most fundamental of all the mental defilements. And we look down, skipping over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, till we come to craving. Craving is the defilement. And so craving plays the role of the defilement. And then clinging is really a strengthening of craving, kind of hardening or stiffening of craving. So clinging is a defilement that plays the role of the defilement. So in the role of defilements, we have ignorance, craving, clinging, factors 1, 8, and 9. Okay, then the next round or role is the round of karma. And so this role of karma is played by the volitional activities. It's actually the volitional activities that create karma. So that plays the role of karma. And then we come down to karmic existence, the karmically active side of existence. So number 10, that karmically active side of existence is belongs to the round of karma. What is the resultant side of existence? That is what begins with birth and leads through growth to aging and death. So number 10 could actually be divided up into two. Factor number 10 actually has two aspects. But the second aspect is covered by birth and aging and death. Okay, so then we've taken out now the defilements, the karma, then everything else belongs to the round of results, that which is the product of karma. So these are from consciousness through feeling, that's 3 to 7, and then birth and aging and death are the results of our previous defilements and karma. Okay, so we have these 3 different groups. And as I said, these 3 groups actually form 3 phases within what I could call one round. So that round begins with the defilements, and so it's our defilements that motivate us to engage in various activities. Generally, defilements motivate us to engage in unwholesome activities. But when we engage in wholesome activities, as long as the defilements are present, those wholesome activities will create more karma. It will be good karma, wholesome karma, but still it belongs to the round of birth and death. So we go from the round of defilements to the round of karma. Then the round of karma is what brings the results or the fruits of karma. And so that includes all these other factors. Then what generally happens on the basis of these results, once there's consciousness, name and form, or the five aggregates together, then based on that, there will take place more defilements will arise, followed by more karmic activity, followed by still another existence. And so any existence can really be represented by the five aggregates of bodily form, feeling, perception, volitional activities, and consciousness. And then these five aggregates stem from past ignorance, craving, and karmic activities, and they serve as the basis for more ignorance, craving, and karmic activities. So if I were to try to complete this little blackboard formula, I'd have to go back forever and ever and ever. Or we just have to draw a stop to it someplace. Okay, so when we look at the 12 factors, then we see that there are what we call two roots of the round. One root in this 12-fold formula is ignorance, which is considered the root that goes from the past and extends into the present. And then there is craving, which is considered the root that exists in the present and extends into the future. So those are the two roots. Okay, at this point I'll ask whether there's any questions, because before I come to the little complicated matter of 20 modes and 4 groups.
What's the difference between craving and clinging?
Basically, clinging is pretty much what I call an intensification of craving. That's one way to look at it. Oh, I see what you're saying. Or else one could look at craving as the desire to obtain what one doesn't yet possess, and clinging as the holding or grasping to what one has already acquired. The commentary, or words like the Suddhimagga, they use a simile. Craving is like the thief extending his hand to take maybe an object from a store. Like the thief is stealing a piece of cake from a bakery. And the clinging, it's the holding on to the cake and taking it back home with it.
So, is covetousness and possessiveness, are they equivalent terms?
Well, it depends on what the Pali words would be. Maybe covetousness is somewhat like craving, and possessiveness like clinging.
Can you explain? Can you break down tanha and upadana? Upadana.
Into the way they're analyzed in the text?
It's a breakdown of really how they're translated.
Oh, I see it etymologically.
Yeah.
Okay. This is actually...
That helps a lot, actually.
Yeah, that could be helpful. Okay, the word that's translated as craving in Pali is tanha. Rescue. The word tanha is related actually to the English word thirst. And we can see this more clearly perhaps from the Sanskrit form, which is Trishna. But there's another Pali form, not so common, but it occurs occasionally in the text. Also it's related to this asina. You can see that maybe the original sense is thirsting for something that one doesn't, like when somebody is thirsty, it means they don't yet have water, but there's an intense yearning or wishing for water to quench the thirst. The word upadana actually based on the root da.
Is that upa plus a plus da? It's just hard for me to read that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is that on the right when you...
Yeah.
Oh,
Is this one?
no, I can see it now.
Is that, can that people on that side see?
Yes.
Okay. So the word da means to give. Like we have the word dana, giving, generosity. But when it has the prefix a, it changes the meaning from to give to take. And then upa is a strengthening word, and it has more the sense of towards oneself. So upadana is taking up upon oneself. And upadana is sometimes used for the fuel of a fire, because the fire is seen as something which takes up the fuel in burning it. And the commentaries sometimes explain upadana, use another. To explain it, they use the expression dalha gatana, which means dalha means firm or tight, and gatana is translated grasping, and it's related actually etymologically to the English word grasping. We could see it more clearly again in the Sanskrit. We've got maha. Yeah, it's just the same except that there's an R, but that the R makes the connection with the English grasping clearer. So it's tightly grasping, or tightly holding.
Thank you. That makes it clearer.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Master, I just have just a clarification. You mentioned that defilement motivates us to engage in unwholesome activities.
Yeah.
But we can also engage in wholesome activities that would create good karma. But
Yeah.
that would still keep us within the realm of birth and death.
Not all of them. There are good activities, of course, that lead to the liberation from the realm. But say when people have sometimes like a desire for rebirth and happy realms, good realms, then they engage in good activities, and that those good activities create the karma, which, if it's really strong enough, will bring them into the good states of existence. And so, I mean, temporarily, tentatively, we have to aim to create good karma in order to have the prospect for a good state of rebirth and to avoid falling into the unfortunate states of rebirth. But still, as long as there's a desire or craving to go on, then the good activities keep us in bondage. Please.
So really, as far as practice, it's...
Maybe take the...
I was just looking, I know I've looked at this a million times, but again, and once again I revisit... Oh, sorry. Once again, revisiting the 12 links, but it seems like... It seems like the... No, I can't help with that. Yeah, no, you did hear me, right?
Yeah, no, it's on now.
Hello?
Yes.
No, it's in terms of practice, it seems like the contact and the feeling comes up automatically. So the practice is between the feeling where you have that, where you're talking about the response
Yeah.
to the craving. So
Yeah.
the practice is in that whole little area right there,
Yeah.
regardless of what you're bringing from the past forward.
Yeah. I'm going to deal with that aspect after I finish the, what I call the forward movement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, somebody asked on the internet, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it still make a sound? Contact needs the minimum of 3 factors, the object, the faculty, and consciousness. When there's no contact, there's no sound. I don't know, I would say that when the tree falls in the forest, there is the sound, but there's no hearing of the sound. The object is there, but there's no awareness of the object, which is the sound. And the second question, can we think of ignorance as the centripetal force or retains the self-delusion of the conscious force, which is constantly grasping and clinging? It's a good metaphor. Centripetal, I think, means pulling in, is that correct? Centrifugal is going out. Yes, centrifuge is what Sanskrit says. Okay, it's a good metaphor. Any further questions? Okay, now then I want to go into it's the third column on the table. This is called the 20 modes and 4 groups. And this is very useful because it shows how the 12 factors are actually constant. It shows how the 12 factors are actually interwoven. It shows how the 12 factors are actually interwoven so that the scheme of the 12 factors is actually something of an abstraction. Okay, so now if we look at the 20 modes, that column, we see that, okay, when there's ignorance, is that coming from this one?
You're getting feedback from here. There's
Oh.
feedback, yeah.
Maybe because the 2 of them are on simultaneously.
Yes, there's feedback. Are there 2 mics on?
No. It's on. It's on.
Yeah, it's not metal, there's feeding back, it's a feedback loop.
Okay, let us try. I didn't have this problem before, so I'll get started. Did you turn off the other one?
It is on.
If you take the microphone off,
Oh, thank goodness.
And just speak with my natural voice?
no, just speak to it, into it,
Okay.
rather than.
Okay, but
Yeah.
this is better, okay. Okay, so these 20 modes show us how the 12 factors are interwoven and actually integrated with one another, with each other. So looking in the first section under the third column, first we see that when ignorance is present, along with ignorance, there'll be craving and clinging. So we don't really have a situation where ignorance belongs to the past and craving and clinging belong only to the present. But in any life in the past, when there was ignorance, along with that ignorance, there was craving and clinging. Then what we call the volitional activities, number 2, and what's called karmic existence are really just 2 different names for the same thing. Maybe they have a slight difference in nuance, but they're pretty much indicating the same process, the activities that create karma. And so when there is, in the past, when there are volitional activities, those volitional activities are creating the karma that will build up a new existence. So we have 10 present. So in the past there were these 5 causes, and in the present, of course, we have these 5 effects, 3 to 7. Now I just want to say a little something about contact and feeling being considered as effects. We shouldn't think that this means that all feeling and all contacts are effects, since there are many types of contacts that I seek out through my present will, and these can give rise to pleasant feelings. So these, for example, maybe I like to watch wrestling matches, just say somebody who has that kind of temperament, not myself.